biggest in sports. The Sports Wrap with Jason Page starts now.
And good to have you with us on this Tuesday, October 24th, 2023. As Chad Erickson told you, I am Jason Page. All right, a lot to do in the next 60 minutes. Rangers punching their ticket for the World Series. Who saw that coming? I got to find a shoe to eat. We'll explain why. We'll also do some football, Contender Pretender Tuesday. Sam Yarnell will be by. We'll do a Monday Night Football recap and try and figure out where things have gone wrong for the San Francisco 49ers. But we start the show today with NBA. Happy NBA opening day. Kurt Helin, Pro Basketball Talk at NBCSports.com. He does a terrific job over there. And a friend of the program. Kurt, we have made it. It is opening night of the NBA. It feels like just yesterday the Nuggets were hoisting the NBA championship trophy. Is it still the Larry O'Brien?
It is still the Larry O'Brien.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you. It's still the Larry O'Brien. I didn't want to sound like I was outdated there. I guess the first question I want to ask you, are we watching the final season of LeBron James? Are we getting ready to embark on and sort of soak in this unofficial last season for LeBron?
I don't know that it is. I mean, I think a lot of it's going to depend on how this season goes for him physically and how he's feeling, and how the team does. But I don't know. I got a feeling he's got one more. Like I do think he wants to play with Bronny, and I know there's a whole new commercial out there where he's like, you should play with Bryce too, like in a few years. I'm like, is Bryce an NBA guy? Is not even the conversation. They're like, we'll see. I don't think so. I think he's going to try to do a 22nd season at age 40, but if physically it doesn't hold up, or if the Lakers are just bad, which I don't expect them to be, but if like things go sideways, he might not.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I still think he wants to hang around. I still don't think we know if the book is closed on Bronny and obviously his future over at USC and everything he's dealing with.
Yeah, that's up in the air a little bit. Yeah,
and I think until that's answered, I don't think we're going to have any resolution on LeBron, as much as people might want to think this is potentially his final season. Before we get into some of the opening night games and that sort of thing. Give me a thought on the storyline that most intrigues you. Obviously, Lillard to the Bucks is a big deal. Yeah. Is there something outside of that? I mean, Wemby and what he does in San Antonio in his rookie season, which I'll obviously ask you about. What's the one storyline that you're kind of keying in on right now?
The hard one to avoid is James Harden and whatever's going on in Philadelphia. Not so much as it pertains to Harden, but how does this impact Joel Embiid? There's already reports like, hey, here's what the Knicks are going to offer. Like, Knicks.
Yes. Let's go.
And look, Miami would be involved, the Clippers. Like, there'd be a bunch of teams lining up. That's kind of the interesting thing, because there is so much pressure on Daryl Morey to nail this. He has got to find a way between this and some cap space next year to turn this into a contender in a conference where, you mentioned it, Damian Lillard is now playing next to Giannis Antetokounmpo. Giannis re-signed, so he's there. Look, they're there for another 4 years together, maybe, at least 3 of that. Boston is loaded. It's an arms race between those two teams, and Philly and Cleveland and everybody else are a full step back. How long does Embiid put up with that, or go, hey, man, I'd rather play in wherever, New York, Miami, Cleveland, Los Angeles, whatever it is, like, that is going to be the undertone of this season. There's going to be a lot of great storylines, but what happens with the reigning MVP, like how frustrated does he get, will matter.
It's kind of funny on the Knicks thing. They sort of stood still while a lot of teams around them made moves. The Porzingis, the Celtics, what Milwaukee did. And it almost feels like the Knicks have gone backwards as a result. Yeah, they dealt away Toppin and whatnot, but it almost feels like the Knicks have kind of gone backwards in a sense without really making any major moves.
Yeah, but they're in a different position than, look, Boston adds Porzingis, who was very good last year, don't get me wrong, but they already had Brown and Tatum. You've got Brunson, and he's not on the table, but you guys in New York need a true number one, build a contender around it, like championship guy alpha. And there are a handful of those guys, but a couple of them between Embiid and Luka are up. And then whatever you think of Karl Anthony Towns, all could be available Towns almost certainly will be available just because the financial crunch about to hit Minnesota. So like those guys are available. New York can they need to hold out for a bigger name. They're good right now. 47 wins last year, made the second round. They're just that big piece away, but you can't just, Porzingis was not the answer, right?
Right.
It has to be a Lillard, Giannis level player.
The thing about the Knicks is, Kurt, and you know this as well as I do, and I don't want to spend too much time on them because they're not really a title contender. The thing is, we've been talking about for 20 years, it feels like, can the Knicks get a big star in free agency? Now, maybe they can get him via trade. And yeah, Jalen Brunson's a great player, don't get me wrong. But Jalen Brunson wasn't the difference between the Knicks winning a championship and not winning a championship. That next piece that you're talking about, whether it's an Embiid or somebody like that is. So unless it's via a trade, you have to wonder, is that superstar player going to come to New York?
I think it's a fair question, but I think the vibe I've gotten talking to just agents and people around the league is that for years, you're right, that was I'll interview with the Knicks, but I don't think so. There just wasn't a path to winning there. They don't see it that way now. There's a sense that if you go there, you can win, and whoever does win there or even get them close, you write your ticket. There's nothing like, winning in New York, they're winning in Boston, winning with the Lakers. There's only a couple of teams that can give you the stats that winning with the Knicks would.
The Phoenix Suns are rated at 51.5 wins on FanDuel Sportsbook, the unofficial sportsbook of the SportsWrap Unofficial, because they don't pay us. At 51.5 wins, where do you see Phoenix? I mean, that feels like a low total for the moves they made in the offseason. I know the surrounding pieces are obviously a part of the conversation, and they were part of some deals here in the offseason. Give me some thoughts on what you expect out of the Suns this season.
I think they're the second best. Well, I have them in my championship tier. They're going to win a lot of regular season games, but I think the caveat on that, by the way, with the under-over is the West is stupid deep. It is 12 deep with teams that think they should be playoff teams. Then the quote unquote bad teams have like Wembanyama on them. There's not really going to be Portland, maybe the only night off in the conference. There's going to be pretty good teams everywhere. So the win totals are going to be depressed a little bit, and you're going to end up with a real bunch of them around 43 to 48 wins. There's just going to be a cluster. I think Denver's above that. I think Phoenix is above that. I'd put them slightly over that total. But here's what would worry me. Bradley Beal's not playing an opening night. Booker probably does, but he is questionable as of when we're speaking. This is a top-heavy roster that has to figure out the bottom half before the playoffs, and Frank Vogel's got to find some defense in there somewhere. But that said, I picked them to go to the finals. I'm high on them, and I think they clear the 51.5, just probably not by that much because – man, you got to play Minnesota one night and they're really good. And then you got to play every night in the West is just not going to be easy.
I can't be bothered with the NBA preseason because I don't have to cover the NBA for a living like you. Especially, middle of baseball postseason, you've got the NFL. It's just impossible for me to get jacked up about the NBA preseason when guys, are just kind of running up and down the court, getting their wind and that sort of thing. What's the sense with Wembanyama in San Antonio in terms of how Popovich rolls him out? Is it going to be, all right, kid, go get him, and you're playing, heavy minutes, or are they going to ease him in, knowing that they're not a playoff team anyway, knowing that this is a long-term process? Is that more of the approach they plan to take?
They plan to take the ease him in approach, but it may not be that easy to, just based on the preseason. He's nutmegging guys with his dribble, right? And not by the way, not just guys. Reggie Bullock, who is a legitimately decent player, this is a rotation NBA player. He's nutmegging him at midcourt. He has made plays through the preseason that were better than what we saw when he played in France last year. It may be hard to hold him back, and what they can't do, what I think I trust the Spurs not to do, is oh my gosh, he's really good. We got to accelerate the timeline. Let's go get some age. Let's trade all our youth for some mediocre veterans moves. Like, I don't think they're going to do that. I think they're going to try to hold him back. I just think it's going to be hard. He's looked great.
Could Oklahoma City make a leap this year? We saw last year, and they were a surprise team. They were really good. They get Chet Holmgren now. Give me a sense with Oklahoma City, as far as being a play-in team last year, how much of or borderline play-in team, the leap they can make this year.
I have them as a play-in team again, but only because the West is so deep. They absolutely could finish 5th or 6th. It is possible. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and nobody really saw him last year if you're not like a league pass addict, because Oklahoma City's not on your national television radar very much last year. He is 5th in MVP voting, all NBA. The Clippers regretted trading him in a lot of ways. Not regretted, but like they did not want to give him up, but they knew they had to for that Paul George Kawhi deal. They didn't think he would be this good. Like, it's been amazing. But what they really lacked last year, really an interior presence and shot blocker in the paint and a little more shooting. Insert Chet Holmgren. If he stays healthy, he fills an important role for them. So yeah, top 6 is not, again, they're going to be in that bunch in the West, just above 500, and they could finish anywhere from 5-6 through the plan. But I think that they're going to be better this year. I just think the conference is going to make it hard on them.
44.5 wins, by the way, is their projected win total as far as FanDuel is concerned. 8 games on national TV for them this year between ESPN and TNT. It tells you that the league is kind of high on them and what the media thinks of them. Give me an MVP pick and give me an NBA Finals pick.
I'm going to go way out on an MVP limb and go with Giannis Antetokounmpo. I know he's like second lowest odds behind Jokic, and Jokic very well could win this. But I have to say, when I saw them in the preseason, I was at the first game with Dame and Giannis, and as clunky and rusty and half of what we saw, you're like, holy crap, it's a problem.
I just wonder if Lillard hurts him, though. I wonder if Lillard takes votes away from him, potentially.
It is possible, but I think Giannis is he just looked ready to explode. He's energized again after a rough season. He sees contention. I just think you're going to get elite versions of him on both ends. He's in the mix. If you want I don't know that there's a real long shot. If Boston blows everybody away this regular season, Tatum will get some nods. Jokic is in there. I wouldn't bet on Embiid. That big Harden-shaped cloud hanging over the Sixers is just going to be a problem, man. NBA Finals. I'm picking Boston over Phoenix. If Milwaukee or Denver were in that mix, it would not surprise me. I think those are the 4 best teams clearly in the NBA. But I'll take Boston over Phoenix.
I haven't asked you about the Warriors. If everything goes perfect for them, and I had this conversation in the offseason, I feel like they're a team that if everything goes perfect, they could still win an NBA championship. Am I nuts?
No, actually, they're in my second tier of contenders, along with the Lakers, on that very premise. There's no margin for error. Klay Thompson has to be a little better. Steph Curry has to, at age 36, still be a top 10 player in the league. Like, a lot of things have to go right for them. But yes, they absolutely could make the finals again. They could be contenders again if things break their way. They're Chris Paul at age, was he 172 now or whatever he is? Like, he's going to just his style of play with the athleticism of Jonathan Kuminga will make they got crushed in those non-Curry minutes in the past. I think he makes them respectable in the non-Curry minutes, even if they're breaking even. That's just a huge step forward for that team.
Kurt Helin, Pro Basketball Talk at NBCSports.com. It's that time of the year. I look forward to talking to you throughout the season, my friend.
Same with you, Jason. Take care, buddy.
It's Kurt Helin joining us on the show. Stick around. Sam Yarnell is right around the corner. We got some NFL to talk about. Weird Monday Night Football game. We'll get into it. Contender, Pretender, baseball. one game away from finding out what our World Series matchup is. Don't go anywhere. Lots more to do on this Tuesday edition of the Sports Wrap.
Hey.
Rolling along on this Tuesday edition of the Sports Wrap. My man, Sam Yarnell, is just seconds away. Thanks to Kurt Helin. Pro basketball talk at NBCSports.com. You'll hear him throughout the season here on the show. Look forward to talking NBA with him throughout the year. He's one of our He's part of our stable of NBA guys that we get on throughout the season. Let's talk some NBA, talk some NFL rather. Our friend Sam Yarnell is here. Monday Night Football, Sam.
I don't know. We could talk about the Wizards.
We notice we did not bring up the Wizards during our conversation with Kurt Helin, unfortunately. See, the only reason we bring up the Knicks is because I'm a fan. So
I almost texted you and told you to ask him about my Wizards and what a great spot they're in this season. Bilal Coulibaly, Rookie of the Year. That's a bet. Get in on it now. Wembanyama, he's not winning Rookie of the Year. It's his former teammate, Bilal Coulibaly, 55-1. I'm in on it. You should be too.
You're drinking the Kool-Aid on Coulibaly? Huh? You like that? You like
That's
that?
Right.
Come on.
The Coulibaly aid, if you will.
I like it. You know what? Since you do the Wednesday show solo, one of these Wednesdays we'll let you have Kurt to yourself, and you can ask him all the Wizards questions you want, and watch his eyes glaze over and roll into the back of his head.
He is gonna hate me.
All right, so let's try and figure out what's wrong with the 49ers. Another loss for them. Back-to-back losses. Basically, a year ago, they had back-to-back losses at this time. I think it was week 6 and week 7 of last season they had back-to-back losses, and we saw how that season turned out. You saw more of the game probably than I did because it was bowling night for me. So
bowling, right.
Well, Mondays and Tuesdays are bowling nights, despite the fact that my right knee
you're going to miss Game 7 again.
Well, that starts at what, 5 o'clock?
I don't know.
My
What's
time,
the translation
8 p.m.
to West Coast?
I think it's 8 p.m. I think it's around an 8 p.m. start because it's that might. I'll see. I'll probably see the first half of the game, and then I'll watch the rest at bowling. So yeah, I'm gonna miss some of Game 7. I made sure to watch as much of that Astros getting their asses kicked, though. Oh, was that fun to watch? On one hand, it wasn't fun to watch because it means having to eat a shoe. On the other hand, it was fun watching the Astros and their fans have to go home so disappointed after getting absolutely stomped by the Rangers and Adolis Garcia, who had an ALCS for the ages. We'll get into that, though. So give me some thoughts on the Niners here now, having dropped 2 games in a row, and a Vikings team all of a sudden that feels like it's surging a bit.
Yeah, so that's what I took away from this game more, Jason, than the Niners being bad, right? The Niners are not bad. We're not ever going to call the Niners bad. It's weird. The last 2 weeks across the NFL, the best teams have really played down. Think about it. The Dolphins have played poorly the last 2 weeks. The Niners have, the Bills have, the Eagles haven't played great the last 2 weeks, even though they looked really good against the Dolphins this week. Yeah, a weird time. NFL is a week-to-week league, right? That's something we always need to remember. But the Vikings are doing what, I think a lot of us thought they would a couple of weeks ago when they were looking really bad to start the season. They've regressed to the mean. They look like the normal Vikings again. They don't look like the last year's supersonic Vikings who are never going to come by again until, the next Bo Jackson. But they looked like a solid, maybe playoff team, might get that NFC wildcard spot, depending on how bad the Lions really are. Maybe they'll compete for the NFC North. Who knows? That's what that game taught me last night. And it was a resoundingly back to mediocre performance from Kirk Cousins, and the Vikings still found a way to win, right? Kirk Cousins wasn't anything special. They still don't have Justin Jefferson, and they beat the best team in the league. My gosh, it's a week-to-week league in the NFL. We've got to remember that. But at the end of the day, the Vikings are hot, and the 49ers are slumping.
Yeah, they certainly are. And you know what, though? I say this all the time. If you're a head coach, you want these moments. You want that time of the year where your team has some struggles because it provides opportunities to kind of coach them up. It gives them some humility. And the Niners have been humbled here over the last couple of weeks. And granted, the injuries played a little bit of a role in it last week, and going on the road and Monday Night Football and coming up a little short. They were still in that game when all was said and done, had their opportunities late. Before the Vikings get the win. But now you start wondering, look at the NFC West. Could the Seahawks have a shot?
No, they don't. Listen, Brock Purdy's not him, but the Seahawks are not them.
Wow, I like that.
I don't think that this is anything that we need to really concern ourselves with. Brock Purdy is going to be fine enough to at least lead the Niners to an NFC championship game. The Seahawks aren't going to make the playoffs. That's the difference between these two teams. I don't really think that's the thing. This game.
Did you say the Seahawks aren't going to make the playoffs? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Really?
Correct.
Wow.
I don't think the Seahawks are going to make the playoffs. Well, think about it. Who are the two? I think the Vikings are probably going to be one of the NFC wildcard teams.
So wait a second. You like the Vikings over the Seahawks to make the playoffs?
100%. 100%.
Wow. Kind of stunned.
Yeah. Yeah, I would take the, and there are a couple of reasons for that. One of those is division schedule strength, right? Like the Vikings, they're going to beat the Packers. They're going to beat the Bears probably both times each. The Seahawks, I don't know if you could say the same.
Vegas disagrees, by the way. I mean, they got Minnesota. Oh my God, yes. They have Minnesota at plus 138 to make the playoffs. They've got Seattle at minus 162.
Okay. I mean, that's not incredible disagreement.
Pretty
you
big.
could bet that either
that's
way.
$1. It's a whole dollar.
Yeah, right. So that's the equivalent of plus 150 to plus 250. I don't know. I think that this is an NFC that really at the end of the day,
I'm giving you a chance to walk this back. I'm giving you a shot.
No, the two the two NFC wildcard spots are going to come down to these four teams. It'll be the Cowboys, the Vikings, maybe the Buccaneers if they can figure it out, and the Seahawks. Now, I like the Cowboys and I like the Vikings.
Yeah, I don't see it. I don't see it with the Vikings. I think they're a mediocre team. Seahawks are good.
I think the Seahawks are less than mediocre.
Yeah, I don't see it.
I just give me Geno or give me Kirk Cousins over Geno Smith 6 weeks.
Yeah, as long as he doesn't have to play in prime time. then you can give me.
I mean,
Cousins.
he won last night.
That's a rarity. That's a rarity. Come on, we know the numbers by now. I'm just looking up and down to try and see. I think the Cowboys are definitely going to be a wild card team.
Yeah. Oh, easily.
So you're basically
100%.
talking one team. So you're basically talking one spot.
Unless the Cowboys have some horrible, terrible collapse and fall.
A lot of people were predicting that a week ago.
I was going to say if they lose a game to the Commanders here down the stretch, then we may be having a different conversation. But as of right now, I think even without Trayvon Diggs, Cowboys are probably going to make the playoffs.
Yeah, I think the Cowboys are in. So you got one spot. And you have to talk about whether you think it's the Vikings or the Seahawks. I'll take the Seahawks every time. I haven't looked at. I don't. Just for humor's sake, they're home for this. They're home for the Browns this week. At the Ravens next week. If they split those, they'd be thrilled. Then they are home for the Commanders, at the Rams, home for the Niners, at the Cowboys. They got a tough schedule. At the Cowboys.
Yeah. It's the Vikings because I'm looking at the Vikings schedule right now.
Home for the Niners. At the Niners. Home for the Eagles. Wow. At the Titans. Man, did they get hit in the face with the schedule. Home for the Steelers, which is not going to be a gimme second to last game of the season, with the Steelers fighting for a playoff spot. And then Seahawks finish at the Cardinals, who will be playing for draft position probably by that point. But boy, that's a tough man. There's not a lot of help from the schedule maker.
You ready to hear what the Vikings' next 6 games are?
Sure, go ahead.
At the Packers, at the Vikings, at the Broncos, home for the Bears.
Wait. Hold on. You're giving me the Vikings schedule? You said at the Vikings. Give me. Who are they playing?
No, I said at the Packers, at the Falcons, home for the Saints, at the Broncos, home for the Bears, and then at the Raiders. They're going to win 4 of those 6 games at least.
No. Listen. It's still a team that has given up as many points as they've scored. I wouldn't be so sure about, there are no gimmies when it comes to Minnesota. So
we're going to take Vikings to make the playoffs right now.
Plus 130. I tell you, plus money. If you think it's between those two teams, it certainly makes for an interesting wager. And I think it probably does come down to those two teams. because I don't see the NFC South getting 2. And I don't see the I don't think so. Well, we'll see what happens with the Niners. Obviously, not their finest moment last night. And again, some adversity for that team in the regular season probably isn't a bad thing at all. All right, I got to get into Contender Pretender because there are a couple of teams in my lists that may come as a shock to you. That's coming up. We'll see what Sam has cooked up for that as well. The Sports Wrap on a Tuesday continues. Don't go anywhere.
Oh,
All right, on this Tuesday edition of the Sports Wrap, it's time for Contender Pretender. The Great Pretender. We'll do some baseball coming up in about 15. Tie it up with some odds and ends. Kurt Helin hung out with us earlier to preview the NBA season. Sam is a human bobblehead, apparently. Just sitting there bobbing his head away.
I was listening to the music.
Okay, fair enough. I'm glad you were listening to the music. All right, Sam, Contender Pretender, you go first.
Get off to a really quick start in this one.
Oh. All right.
Fake the handoff.
Should I do the contenders? The
First
contenders
down.
first, Jason.
Intercepted.
Since contender is on the top in the graphic.
The Bills turn it over.
Right.
First play from
My
scrimmage
contenders
for
this
Buffalo. And the Pats take over.
The Cleveland Browns. We've forgotten about the Cleveland Browns, and now I know that this was not a good game for them. It wasn't. We need to admit that and accept that. This is a bury the football win for the Cleveland Browns, which those are pretty hard to come by. The Bills had one last week against the Giants. But I'm not going to... The Cleveland Browns have shown that their defense can do enough with a nobody at quarterback to win games. And that, when you think about postseason football, is what really matters. Now, getting there will be a struggle for Cleveland, right? They're in the Ravens division. They're going to have to pray for that second wild card spot because the first is almost definitely going to come out of the AFC East, barring a wild collapse from the Dolphins. I think if the Browns can get in, they'll actually go far. Like, they'll win 1 or 2 games in the playoffs, which pretty far in the NFL playoffs and brings a lot of people back when you're talking about jobs in-house. The Browns are my first contender this week. I just think we need to not forget about them when we get, 2 months down the road here, and we're thinking about that last AFC playoff spot. Don't count the Browns out. My second contender is the most obvious after last night. It's the Vikings. We've forgotten that the Vikings exist. We've written them off completely after their start, when quite frankly, it made, like the Bills, be one of the best things that's happened to the Vikings. Starting slow like this, playing your worst football at the beginning of the season is when you want to play your worst football and get better every week. That's what the Vikings have seemingly done. It seems like they've turned over a new leaf, and they still, let's not forget, don't have the best wide receiver in the NFL on the field, and they just beat the best team in the NFL talent-wise. I think the Vikings are still contenders. We cannot forget about them. Jason and I just talked about it a lot, but don't forget about the Vikings when playoff time rolls around. And my last contender is a contender that I put on the list every week for fun. But at this point, I've really drank the Kool-Aid enough that I've started to believe in the Houston Texans. I think the Houston Texans are a real contender this year. Just like the Vikings and, quite frankly, the Browns since the Deshaun Watson injury. This is a team that's gotten better every week. This is an offense that will be electric. They're getting there. I love the C.J. Stroud to Tank Dell combination. C.J. Stroud, clearly the best quarterback to come out of the last draft. And I don't think that when we look back on the draft in 5 years, it will even be very close. My gosh, the Panthers blew it there. But the Texans are a contender. D'Amico Ryans has done a full 180 with that team, and we're going to need to think about the Houston Texans when playoff time rolls around. So to recap my 3 contenders, the Browns, the Vikings, and the Houston Texans. My pretenders, everybody knew that this team was going to lead the list, and it's obviously the Miami Dolphins.
Trying to cut it to the lead.
I said it to Jason yesterday on the show. When the Miami Dolphins, they're like a really good FBS team, right?
Short pass.
When they're playing the Alabama School of Mines, they'll beat them 70-0 or whatever that score was. But when the lights are on and they're playing the big teams and they're playing the Clemsons of the world, they shrivel up and regress back to the old Dolphins of the early 2010s, like the Matt Moore Dolphins. That's kind of what they look like against really good teams right now. This team will be good. The Dolphins will be great even in the next 5 years. This is not their year. They're pretenders this year. Mike McDaniel is not ready to lead this team into the playoffs, let alone deep into the playoffs.
Allen on first down.
The Dolphins may not even make the playoffs this season, and that may be a bet that we get.
The Bills turn it over.
My next
play
pretender,
from scrimmage for Buffalo.
So with the pretenders, I had to do teams that were 500 or above just because
See if the
That's how you
Patriots can
have to
take
get
advantage of it
with
here.
so many obvious
Opening up
teams.
from the
My
You
next
got your own
contender-
criteria.
Douglas
That's fine.
again.
Yeah, yes, that's
Squeezes
100%. That is my own.
And gets
that's
enough for the first
who
down.
I'm picking from, right? My
Shotgun
next
for Jones.
pretender is the Tampa Bay
On the
Buccaneers.
ground.
This is a
Ezekiel
team that
Elliott.
we've talked about all season as maybe taking advantage of a bad division. I
Looking
don't
for
think
a
they're
yard.
even going to be able to do that
Through the
this
air.
year.
Jones.
The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are crashing and
Diving
burning. We're going to
attempt.
see it on
It's
Thursday.
Douglas for the
I need the
first
Bills
down.
to get right in that game for the sake of the AFC East.
Really good job
and the
creating that
Dolphins
space.
still being pretenders.
Seventh play of the
but
drive.
the Tampa
It's
Bay
Elliott.
Bucks they're just crap. They
Trying to
got
punch it
too
in.
hot too early. And it
Touchdown.
showed their hand,
Patriots.
and now they've got nothing left in the chamber. My last pretender is the Pittsburgh
Trying to cut into the
Steelers.
lead.
Like,
Bass.
it seems
boy.
over the last 2 weeks, there's
that thing-
been a realization
Allen, short
that
pass.
Matt
Cook.
Canada is a
Working it
serviceable
for the
offensive
touchdown.
coordinator. He's not.
Buffalo.
He's been bad in the Pittsburgh offense since the beginning of Kenny
James
Pickett's
Cook.
career, if
The
not
catch
before
and
that.
run for the score. Pieces in between where the wind
I
can
don't
get in
believe
there
in
and
the
wreak
Pittsburgh
havoc.
Steelers. I know a lot of people are
49-yarder.
picking them to turn
Ryland's
it
got
around
it.
and compete with the Ravens and the Browns in the AFC North this year. I don't see it
Jones
happening.
looking,
The
throws,
Steelers are my
Kendrick
last
Bourne.
pretenders. So
He's
the
got the
Dolphins,
angle.
Bucks,
Touchdown.
and Steelers
Patriots.
are my 3 pretenders, Jason.
Interesting. Very interesting. Mine are. I guess I'm in a little bit of a different place than you are. But let's see here. Contender pretender. I'm going to start with my contenders. The Jaguars are a contender. 5-2, 4 straight wins on the season for them. One of the better underrated defenses in the NFL so far this season. And a quarterback that isn't even playing his best football. I mean, think about that. You've got a guy going right now in Trevor Lawrence that's kind of played mediocre here. And yeah, the knee injury has played a role in that. But, you know, this offense still isn't even rolling, I think, the way it could. The Jaguars with 4 straight wins, a stout defense, and a quarterback that's not playing his best football, still could be coached up. 5-2. I like Jacksonville, and they're in a soft division, which obviously helps as well. The Ravens are a contender. They've given up 97 points in 7 games. Just stop and kind of soak in that for a second. 97 points in 7 games. It's a staggering number in a league that is geared towards offense now. 5-2, and again, a team that's played choppy football. There's so many times that I've come on here on Monday or Tuesday, and even in Contender Pretender, and talked about the Ravens as a team that isn't even playing their best football. So for me right now, I think the Ravens have to be considered a contender. I think they're a potential contender to come out of the AFC. As much as I love Kansas City, and I'll get to them in a second, as much as I love Kansas City, if they had to play Baltimore right now, that's a hell of a matchup. If that was your AFC title game, that's a hell of an AFC title game. And Baltimore's game travels well. Now, if Baltimore has to go into Kansas City, they can win that game. If Baltimore and Kansas City played right now on a neutral field, it's a toss-up for me. If Baltimore has to go into Kansas City for an AFC championship game, we're making them what? 3.5-point favorite? 2.5-point favorite? I think Baltimore can beat them. The Chiefs, though, if we're talking about contenders, we got to talk about Kansas City. They've won 6 straight since the opening night loss, where Travis Kelce didn't play against the Lions. Mahomes to Kelce, best duo in football short of Tua and Tyreek. I mean, those guys, the ability for those two, you know, they probably don't even need to make plays in the huddle. They're like schoolyard football. Just roll the football out there and watch those two guys make plays. And last week they showed they can do it whenever they want. Defense continues to wow. Spagnuolo's done a terrific job defensively. That's why I think them in Baltimore would be a great game. Take the under. You know, in a hypothetical matchup between those two teams, if the total was 42, I'm probably taking the under. If the Super Bowl were today, though, I still think Kansas City would be in it. All right, pretenders, I got to put the Dolphins there. How do you not? 2 tough opponents and 2 ass kickings. You know, Eagles and Bills both soundly defeated the Dolphins. They've beaten up on the Sisters of the Poor, and they seem to lack answers when a team can negate their speed. Now, again, injuries have hurt this team. Achane was having a phenomenal start to the season. The injury there, a factor. The offensive line issues. It's made them a one-dimensional team. Raheem Mostert had nothing on Sunday. So you're talking about a one-dimensional team. And it's going to make it a lot more difficult for them to be able to do things in the passing game when teams know they're going to be throwing on every down. And they're just not that good defensively. We talked about 97 points allowed by the Baltimore Ravens. Do you know how many the Dolphins have given up? Almost double that number. And again, against the Sisters of the Poor, that great offense can mask that. Against really good teams, it's going to be difficult to do that. Dolphins have to be a pretender. The Bills are a pretender. I'm sorry. There's no getting around it. For a team that when the season started was supposed to be a Super Bowl contender, division winner, right now, they'd be lucky to make the playoffs. They could easily be 3-4 rather than 4-3. Losses to the Jets, Jaguars, and Patriots. Injuries an issue for them as well, but every team's got them. And something's just not connecting here. Even Sam talked about it yesterday. Sean McDermott. We've heard the crying about the offensive coordinator and the play calling. Something's not connecting here. This team is way better talent-wise than a 4-3 football team. So what's not connecting? I don't know. People far smarter than me will figure that out. The Falcons are a pretender. I don't care that they're leading the NFC South. They have a 115 to 133 point differential. They're the Vikings of last year. It's fool's gold. Even if they win that division, they're not going anywhere. Put them in the playoffs, watch them get spit stomped by somebody. I'm trying to not swear today on the show because yesterday I dropped some F-bombs. So for me, the Falcons, 115 and 33, that point differential really kind of sticks out to me. It's fun watching them. You know, Bijan and all these guys. It's fun. It's a fun team to watch. But if you're talking to me about whether or not they are a contender to win anything, and again, they could win that division at 9-8. Hell, they might be able to win it at 8-9. They're going to be one of those teams that gets into the playoffs that everybody's going, man, should division winners automatically get in like the Seahawks from years ago? Yeah, I can't put the Falcons as a contender, but I could certainly make them a pretender. Jaguars, Ravens, and Chiefs, my contenders this week. Dolphins, Bills, and Falcons, my pretenders this week. That's what we got. Agree? Disagree? You're awful quiet over there.
I just need that clipped for when both the Dolphins and the Bills make the playoffs.
So what if they make the playoffs? Hey, look, contender is relative to what your expectations are. Fine, they make the play. If they make the playoffs, are either of them right now a Super Bowl contender? Honestly,
Jason, I guess the expectations for both of those teams changed drastically when you take the Dolphins and you're looking at a kid in Achane who was probably going to finish second in Rookie of the Year voting.
Yep.
You have the left tackle go down for, I think his estimated timeout is like 6 months.
I've mentioned both of them, but I've mentioned both of those.
I understand that, but I'm saying that for the Bills, right? They're only all pro. They're only from last year, that great team. They're only singular all pro. Their play caller on defense. Injuries there's levels to that, to injuries, right? Obviously, we all know that. But when you have injuries at those kinds of key positions for the Dolphins, a kid who is touching the ball 40 times a game, and a guy who protects your quarterbacks, well, not his blind side because he's a lefty, but you have a guy who protects the quarterback in a very fragile offense with regard to letting the quarterback get hit. The expectations are obviously lowered. So I don't think that we think of those teams as necessarily Super Bowl contenders anymore. Or if we did, it would require some stroke of luck or some move at the trade deadline. I think that those teams will still probably compete with the Chiefs for the AFC Championship.
No way.
But at this point, you could just let the Chiefs play in Vegas tomorrow for the Super Bowl. I don't really think there's any question that they will be winning the AFC this year.
Yeah, the Chiefs are a juggernaut. They really are.
So at the end of the day, I think for both of our lists, right, because we both had the Dolphins as pretenders, but at the end of the day, when you think about the AFC, it's hard to not call the entire conference besides the Chiefs pretenders, because Kansas City season
I think
alone.
I think Baltimore's a contender. I
don't think Baltimore hangs with Kansas
can
City.
beat. I absolutely think they can.
Really?
Yes. Absolutely.
You think the Baltimore defense could slow down Patrick Mahomes?
They've given up 97 points in 7 games.
That's fair. That
is a staggering number. Now, again, you got to look at who they've played, and just real quick here, because we're running long here. Let's see. They gave up beat the Texans 25-9. Gave up 24 to the Bengals. The loss to the Colts, they gave up 22. Then they gave up 3 to the Browns, 17 to the Steelers, and 16 to the Titans, and they held the Lions to 6. Now, again, Lions are a different team, road versus home. I got to be honest, I almost put the Lions as a pretender this week.
Whoa,
yeah.
whoa.
And look, if you look at it by the numbers, they feel a little like Minnesota of last year. Go and look at it by the numbers. A lot of close games.
No, I understand.
And winning those close games. Not good on the road.
Jared Goff's an indoor cat.
That's an issue. I think you can
Super Bowl's indoors this year.
If you can get all that way, which I think Lions fans would sign up for. I almost put the Lions as my third pretender. Go ahead.
The Dolphins currently have better odds to win the AFC than the Ravens do.
Say that one more time.
The Dolphins are 5-1 to win the AFC. The Ravens are 6-1 to win the AFC, and the Bills are 6.5-1 to win the AFC. The Chiefs are plus 210.
Wow.
I might get a Ravens ticket.
I might get a Ravens ticket too if I were you. Telling you. There's something going on there, and in a good way. And I'm not a Ravens guy. I'm not a Lamar Jackson guy. All right, baseball to finish it out. Half of the World Series matchup has been finalized. We'll get to it next. All right, getting set to wrap this baby up. Sam will be solo tomorrow. Solo Sam. That's his nickname. He'll be here tomorrow to entertain and wow you. I had to get something to get the swelling down in my right knee, man. Whew. Got some serious swelling in the right knee after a weekend of bowling and then bowling again last night and slated to bowl 3 more games tonight. Telling you, man, getting old isn't fun. Try to avoid it if you can. Father used to say, live fast, die young, and have a good-looking corpse.
There you go. That's all you need.
All right, let's finish it out with some baseball. Bruce Bochy got away with it. Had Scherzer in there to start for a few innings. Then he went to Jordan Montgomery. And look, at the end of the day, that offense just carried. I mean, Adolis Garcia and, you know, the Rangers offense, which was the story all season long. And many times, good pitching beats good hitting most of the time. And this is one of those series that sort of defied that. The Rangers offense is just, it's that good. And, you know, it was special all season long, and we all questioned whether or not their pitching would be able to hold up. You don't need pitching when you score 11 runs, you know, and put up the sort of offensive numbers that they put up. And I don't care who they play in the World Series right now. I think I'd make them a favorite, whether it's the D-Backs or the Phillies. I think the Rangers are going to win the World Series, which is crazy, considering they barely got into the playoffs and blew the division on the last day of the season. They're going to win the World Series.
It's not crazy because think about, I understand it may have been crazy if you said it 24 days ago, but if you said it back in April, no one would have batted an eye with the amount of money that team spent on getting to this exact point this season. Now, they didn't do it the way we expected them to, and they were crafty in moving players at the deadline, giving up their best prospect to the Mets. But regardless, the Rangers have been expectational this year. This is exactly where they were supposed to be before the season started. Credit to them for turning around the players that they have, right? Adolis Garcia was unwanted by the Cardinals. They had to turn him into an ALCS MVP right in their face. I don't think the Rangers are going to win the World Series solely because I don't think that they can beat the Phillies or the Diamondbacks. And I also think the Phillies and the Diamondbacks both make better stories. So that's what I want to root for. That said, it was an impressive win. It was. We got to give the Rangers their flowers. It was to go into Houston and shut down that team with that playoff experience. It was impressive.
Minus 136 on the Rangers right now to win the World Series. The Phillies plus 215. The Diamondbacks. You could still get the Diamondbacks at plus 450. 5 wins from a World Series. You could still get them at plus 450. It's not a bad number. I'll Venmo you. I'll Venmo you $35. That's all I got in my Venmo account.
For the Diamondbacks, though. See.
Team of Destiny. They are plus 142 tonight, by the way.
Yeah, that's what I might do. I might take the Diamondbacks. I might split the unit, go Diamondbacks money line tonight with half of that unit, Phillies to win the World Series with the other half of that unit.
By the way, the starting pitcher for the Diamondbacks tonight, his last name looks like something if you like accidentally hit your head on the keyboard when you doze off. Pfaadt.
It's Brandon Pfaadt.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, Brandon Pfaadt,
had an amazing start earlier in this series too.
Yeah,
game the Diamondbacks won.
What an interesting season for Brandon Pfaadt. Man, he was spot starter turned opener, turned postseason starter, turned long guy, turned, he's done everything for the Diamondbacks
How about
this year.
4.5? By the way, how about 4.5 strikeouts as the number for Brandon Pfaadt?
Here's the thing.
He struck out a bunch in that first matchup. I think it's 8 or 9.
You'd need him to get to 5 in the first 2 innings because it's game 7. His leash is going to be incredibly short. I haven't looked, but I would imagine that they're going to have either Gallen or Kelly ready out of the bullpen. Yeah, I wouldn't touch any Pfaadt props tonight. There's only one prop that I would think about, and I don't even know if this is a prop in Virginia, California. Well, it's not in California, but I don't know if it's a prop in Virginia. The only time I've ever bet it was when I was in New Jersey one time, and there was a prop for total pitchers used in the game. And I would go over whatever that number was.
Total pitchers used in the game. I'm looking to see.
Yeah, so normally you'll get like a 6 or a 5.5 or a 6.5, I think. But I think that Pfaadt and Suarez both are going to have short leashes. Both teams will have starters ready to come out of the bullpen. I'm not touching pitching props in this game.
You think the Phillies win? By the way, you thought the Astros would win last night. We saw how that turned out.
Last night.
I gotta find a shoe to. I have to find a shoe to eat as well.
Right. You have to find a shoe to eat. More importantly, I was the most confident last night in Max Scherzer blowing up. I did not say the Astros would win. I just said, or I may have said the Astros would win, but I was more confident in Max Scherzer having a blow up, forget about it start. And what did he do? He had a blow up, forget about it start.
I wouldn't say blow up. They still won the game. If it was a blow up start, they probably lose. I mean, he gutted it out. He gave you a few innings. I mean,
it's hard to lose when the offense puts up 12 runs, 10 runs.
I just wonder what comes of him in the World Series. Like, what do you do
Max
with
Scherzer?
him? Yes, what do you do with him in the World Series?
He's
put up 2 stinkers now in the ALCS. What do you do with him if you're Bruce Bochy? He cannot be the go-to guy. If it's a game 7 or a closing, I don't know how you do. I mean, Jordan Montgomery's been so good that Jordan Montgomery's earned that opportunity at this point. Now, I don't know how the rotation's going to set up. Maybe he's a game 3 starter at this point, something like that. So maybe you can do him for a 3 and 7. But if it comes down to it, Jordan Montgomery's got to start your biggest game right now if you're Bruce Bochy.
I think it's got to be Scherzer going game 3 probably, but then that lines him up to start game 7, which turns into a little bit of a problem. Your first 2 have to be Montgomery and Eovaldi. It's as simple as that if you're Bruce Bochy. If you want any chance in this series, that's who your first 2 have to be, no matter whether you're playing the Diamondbacks or the Phillies. Now you get to the question of Scherzer. Well, say Scherzer starts game 3, then you're on the turn. You've got to see if your game 1 starter, we'll call it Montgomery for the sake of the exercise, can go again. If he can, great. If not, then what are you looking at if you're the Rangers? Then that's where the waters start to get a little muddy. I don't know. Their pitching rotation for this series will be very interesting because we know what it's going to be from either of the National League teams. Whichever National League team it's going to be, you're going to get from the Phillies, you're either going to get what? They'll go Wheeler, Nola, Suarez, and then figure it out in game 4. Unless, am I forgetting someone? I may be. I don't know.
Possible.
And then from the Diamondbacks, they're gonna go Kelly, Gallen, Pfaadt, and then same thing. Figure it out game 4.
All
so it's kind of a coin flip in terms of the pitching in this series for me.
All right, before we go, who wins tonight?
No.
Yes. I'm not asking you to bet. I'm not asking you for a money bet. Who do you think wins? Gut feeling. Who do you think wins tonight?
Who do I think wins? It's so tough.
I'm not asking you to put somebody's money on the line. This is not for betting purposes.
I'm not.
Who do you think wins tonight?
Jerry and Louisville, we're staying away from this game, except maybe Kyle Schwarber homer. I kind of like that bet. Anyway, to actually win the game from a baseball standpoint.
Who wins?
I think the Diamondbacks.
I think so too. See, we're on the same page. Usually
I
when I
think the
follow you,
Diamondbacks
it goes
do it.
spectacularly bad, which means it could be 7-0 in the third tonight. And
Phillies team total over.
and we're
Bang.
switching over to the NBA quickly. All right, that's going to wrap it up for us. By the way, quick odd and end with the NBA, with the NFL trade deadline approaching. Jerry Jones says he's not looking to make any deals, will not initiate trade talks. So, something to keep an eye on as we approach the trade deadline. NBA opening night, enjoy it. 125 international players, a record number on NBA rosters. Talk about an international flair to that league. Sam Yarnell will handle the hosting duties for this show tomorrow. Looking forward to listening to that. Looking forward to watching that. I'm Jason Page. Thanks to Kurt Helin of Pro Basketball Talk at NBCSports.com. That does it for us. The Sports Wrap is a wrap. We'll see you back here on Wednesday.